The $5,000 1099 mistake that triggers an IRS audit. I just got a panicked call from a client who owes $5,400 in IRS penalties because they didn't send 1099s last year. And the IRS is now auditing their entire business. This is the first week of January. You have exactly 30 days to avoid this nightmare. I'm Bev from bookkeepingcoach.net. In 30 years of bookkeeping, I've helped hundreds of businesses through 1099 season. Our firm just won Best of Georgia for accounting services. And every single January, I see businesses make the same expensive 1099 mistakes. Here's what happened to this client. And what could happen to you? They run a small construction company. Throughout 2025, they paid several contractors, electricians, plumbers, drywall installers. They kept records in QuickBooks. Everything seemed organized. December came. They were busy with year-end projects. They figured they'd deal with 1099s in January. January arrived. They were overwhelmed. They thought, maybe I can just skip the 1099s. The contractors will report the income anyway, right? So they didn't file 1099s. January 31st, deadline passed. Nothing happened immediately, so they thought they were in the clear. Fast forward to July, they get a letter from the IRS. Not just one letter, a whole packet. The IRS computer system has cross-referenced the payments they made to contractors against what these contractors reported as income. The numbers don't match. Red flags everywhere. The first consequence? They're being assessed penalties for failing to file 1099s. The penalty starts at $50 per form if you're less than 30 days late. But they're 6 months late. The penalty jumps to $290 per form. They should have filed 38 forms. That's over $11,000 in potential penalties, but there's a cap at $5,400 for small businesses. So they owe $5,400 in penalties just for not filing the forms. But here's where it gets worse. Because of the discrepancy in reporting, the IRS is now auditing their entire business. They want to see 3 years of tax returns. They want documentation for every contractor payment. They want proof that these were legitimate business expenses. The business owner calls their accountant in a panic. The accountant says, this is going to take me 15 to 20 hours to prepare everything the IRS wants. My rate is $325 per hour. This audit response is going to cost you about $6,000. So now we're at $5,400 in penalties plus $6,000 in accounting fees. That's $11,400 total, all because they didn't file 1099 forms. But the stress doesn't stop there. The audit takes 6 months. The business owner is constantly worried. Are they going to find other problems? It's affecting their sleep, their focus on the business, their family life. And here's what most business owners don't know. Once you're flagged for an audit, the IRS often looks more closely at your future returns too. You're on their radar now. I've seen cases where business owners thought they were exempt from filing 1099s for certain payments. They paid contractors through PayPal or Venmo and assumed those platforms would handle the reporting. Wrong. You still need to file 1099 NEC forms for those payments if they're for services. Another client thought they only needed to track contractors who they paid over $600. That's true, but you need to be tracking everyone from dollar one. They hired a graphic designer and paid them $200 in March, $300 in June, and $350 in October. That's $850 total. They need a 1099. But the business owner didn't realize this contractor had crossed the threshold. So let's talk about what actually needs to happen with 1099s to avoid these disasters. First, you need to identify every person or business you paid $600 or more during 2025 for services. But it's not as simple as just pulling a report from QuickBooks. There are 12 specific types of payments that require 1099s and 7 common types that don't. For example, you need 1099s for independent contractors who provide services, but you don't need them for corporations, with some exceptions. You need them for rent payments to individuals. You need them for attorney fees, regardless of whether the attorney is incorporated. You need them for medical and healthcare payments. But you don't need 1099s for merchandise, freight, or storage. You don't need them for telephone services. You don't need them for payments that you make to corporations, except for attorney fees and medical payments. Are you starting to see how complicated this gets? Most business owners are guessing. Second, for every person or business that needs a 1099, you need complete and accurate information. That means their legal business name, their complete mailing address, and their taxpayer identification number, either their Social Security number or their employer identification number. And here's the catch. You're supposed to collect this information before you pay them. That's what the W-9 form is for. If you don't have a completed W-9 on file, you're technically supposed to withhold 24% of their payments as backup withholding. How many business owners actually do that? Almost none. Which means come January, you're scrambling to get W-9 forms from contractors. And some won't respond. Some have moved. Some are nervous about giving you their Social Security number. Without that information, you can't file accurate 1099s. If you file with incorrect information, like a wrong Social Security number, the IRS rejects your filing. Now you're late, even though you tried to file on time. Third, you need to understand that there are different 1099 forms for different situations. Most people will need a 1099 NEC for non-employee compensation. But there's also a 1099 MISC for other types of payments. There's a 1099 INT for interest and a 1099 DIV for dividends. Fourth, you need to file these forms with the IRS and send copies to the recipients. But they don't all go to the same place. Copy A goes to the IRS, copy B goes to the recipient. Some states require state copies as well. Each has different deadlines. Fifth, you need to verify everything before you file. One wrong digit in a Social Security number, one misspelled name, and the IRS computer rejects your filings. Sometimes you don't find out until weeks later. By then, you're past the deadline and facing penalties. And sixth, there are 23 different scenarios and exceptions that can affect whether you need to file a 1099, what type to file, and how to file it correctly. Most business owners don't even know these scenarios exist. All of this needs to happen in the next 30 days. So where does that leave you? You basically have three options. Option one, do it yourself. Pull reports, track down W-9 forms, figure out which forms you need, navigate the IRS filing system, and hope you did everything correctly. The problem is it's incredibly time-consuming. And if you take shortcuts, you're exposing yourself to penalties. Option two, hand it to your CPA. This works, but CPAs are slammed in January and February. They're going to charge you a premium, anywhere from $400 to $1,200 just for 1099 preparation. Option three, skip it and hope the IRS doesn't notice. We've already talked about how that turned out, $11,400 in penalties and fees. So you need to either invest the time to do it correctly, pay someone to do it, or face potentially massive penalties. If you're sitting there right now feeling overwhelmed, or if you're realizing you're behind on this and the January 31st deadline is approaching fast, I want you to know that you have options. I work with businesses on this exact issue every single January. Some need help getting their 1099s done correctly this year. Others want to set up systems so they're not scrambling like this next year. And some have already missed deadlines in past years and need help getting compliant. Whatever your situation is, I can help you figure out the best path forward for you. I've put a link in the description below where you can book a call with me. We'll look at where you are with your 1099s, what needs to happen before the January 31st deadline, and figure out the best approach for your business. This is not something you want to wait on. We're already a week into January. That gives you 3 weeks. If you're going to get help with this, now is the time. The link is in the description. Book a call, and let's make sure you don't end up with $11,400 in penalties and fees. Look, I know 1099s are not the most exciting topic. Nobody starts a business because they're excited about tax forms. But this is one of those compliance issues that you absolutely cannot ignore. The penalties are real, the audits are real, and they can seriously damage your business financially. You have 30 days. Use them wisely. Don't let the deadline pass and hope for the best. If you found this helpful, subscribe to the channel because we're going to be talking about year-end bookkeeping and tax issues all month long. The link is in the description to book a call if you need help. And I'll see you in the next video.